Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hey, friend. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so delighted to have you here. I hope you are having a wonderful August. Here we are in a brand new month. Time flies when we're having fun. I've been telling you that July was really about foundations and kind of my behind the scenes life and my desire to work through all of the piles of everything in anticipation of my next trip to France, which is in a couple of weeks. And as I have focused on that, I am happy to report that the to-do list is finally shorter than what has been done list, which feels really good. It's such a beautiful tipping point, and I'm right on schedule for heading to the airport in just a couple of weeks. With a clean slate, it feels really good. And as I focused on that word of foundations and those practices, and then turning my attention to August and specifically to the Say Yes Summit that we're in the middle of right now, the theme for this month's summit is freedom. So I've been really on the lookout for things that feel like freedom to me. And it's been such a fun discovery that I decided to post something every day that feels like freedom. So if you've been following along on Instagram, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, feel free to follow me and see these wonderful examples of what freedom feels like and what it looks like every day to me. And I think there's so much to this knowledge that what we focus on grows, and we can certainly focus on the many things that are not feeling very freeing right now or are not delighting us, but that doesn't feel good. So let's shift our focus. And I think it's so fun to consider this idea of not just having a word or a phrase for the year, but setting intentions a month at a time. I felt really, really good about being intentional of how I wanted to spend July, and I practiced very strong boundaries in not adding new things to the calendar, which, you know me, that is not easy, but my commitment to myself is real, and I'm very proud of myself that I stuck with my plan and my intention, and I was successful in that work. And now I'm looking forward to practicing freedom with more intentionality and seeing where that leads me, which of course I know it's leading me to France, which that's super fun. Love to have you follow me there. Well, I'd really love to have you join me there. But until that time, you can follow along on all the adventures. But there's so much freedom in travel, I find, and it's the same for today's guest. We have the amazing, remarkable, holy smokes, so accomplished Jenny Fielding. She is one of the most active global pre-seed investors, having invested in over 300 companies as the first money in. She is the co founder and managing partner of Everywhere Ventures. She has built a thriving community of over 500 founders and operators who help source, diligence, and invest in the next generation of startups across three core verticals: money, health, and work. Prior to launching her own fund, Jenny spent 7.5 years as the managing director of Techstars, where she invested in a portfolio of companies with a current market cap of over $10 billion. Jenny is a two-time founder, a lawyer by training, and an adjunct professor at Columbia University and Cornell Tech. And as if that is not enough, she is also an author, and her new book, Venture Everywhere: Travel, Entrepreneurship, and a Roadmap for Life, is now available, and it dives into her 20 years of travel and working with businesses around the globe. This conversation was like a vacation and an MBA at the same time. I know you're going to love her fabulous insight, and she's just cool to be around. And I know you're going to feel that too. Please enjoy this inspiring conversation with Jenny Fielding. Jenny, I am just thrilled to have you here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Wendy. I'm excited.
It's going to be fun. We love so many of the same things, and I feel like so many elements of what I know that you do look like a picture of my future self. So I'm very excited to hear how we got there and what it looks like. The view is fantastic, I'm sure. But first, I would love to hear, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Yeah, so I think I'm someone who, traditionally runs around a lot and pushes myself. And saying yes to myself right now is just taking care of myself and slowing down a bit, which is not native to me. But I am really embracing it. And you know what? The world goes on, which is great. My business goes on, my life goes on. And so sometimes you just need to remember that.
Right, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And if you are interested, willing to chat about that a little bit more, sometimes those decisions we come to on our own. Sometimes some outside force says, and you will be stopping now. And sometimes, we knew that was coming, but we think, as soon as this project is done, as soon as this, you know, we keep also moving the goalpost. So it doesn't ever happen. How are you experiencing that? I mean, you have this global existence and you are being in the room with people that are on the leading edge of thought and innovation, and slowing down would sound so scary because what if I miss out on what's here? I mean, we know that we can't miss out on what's meant for us, but sometimes we forget that that's true. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really an interesting time. I had having a health issue, and it just very much takes you by surprise. It's obviously never a good time, and I'm lucky because I know that I will get through this. But I think my first thought as I was like being wheeled into surgery was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to make this event next week? This like big event that I
Right.
had. And I think like, my brain is just so wired for action and continuous activity that like I can't even conceive of not being able to do things, and so when you're physically unable to, all of a sudden you have to like reset your priorities and figure out what you can actually do. So it's been mentally challenging, physically challenging as well. But ultimately I think it kind of makes you stronger because you realize how resilient we are as humans.
Right. And I wonder if you feel at all this, I want to say this, so culturally, when something like that happens in a movie, right? And we see some, you know, trailblazing CEO, like doing his thing, but he's neglecting his family, whatever. Like there's some sad thing happening over here. And then we say, oh, this happens. And now he's really seeing what his priorities are and whatever. Everyone lives happily ever after. What do you feel like that looks like? And perhaps this is has been your experience, but you're doing everything that you love and you are like you created this beautiful machine that is traveling at this rate. And sometimes we don't think that we need to reprioritize, or no one's on their deathbed wishing they were tomorrow, all the things. Like I totally get that,
Yeah,
but I don't feel that way about how I spend all day long every day. And
right.
I just wonder if for you, because it looks to me like you're doing all fabulous expansive things, like that there's prioritizing yourself and what your body needs is different than you know, whatever you're quote unquote neglecting if you're that dude in that movie. But I don't think you are. So, like, how are you navigating that? Because that seems like uncharted territory.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is at our venture capital fund, Everywhere Ventures, we invest in what we call the resilient economy. And so, what that means is software application services that make institutions more resilient, right? So that could be healthcare. We're not investing in the healthcare delivery, but what is the kind of the scaffolding around the healthcare industry that it fortifies it, makes it more resilient, or climate, or some of these areas that we invest in. So I've been thinking a little bit about, what does that mean to build a resilient company that can operate, or a resilient life, right? So not just a company, but
Mm.
a life that can operate even when you're not able to fully participate. So I guess that's how I've been channeling it. I've always thought of that, our investments as being external, but now I'm kind of looking internally and saying, like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, even if I'm not there, like our Monday partner meeting happens, right? And
Yeah.
deals are still moving forward. And, and then I see maybe the weaknesses where I am a bottleneck in places. And like, I'm starting to think about, like, okay, how can I make sure that I don't have to be part of the equation 24/7? So I think there's a little bit of freedom in kind of acknowledging that there are ways to extract ourselves, whether voluntarily or not, and still have a viable life and business. Whether it's like I can't go out right now and like, be with all my community, but I've been doing, all types of stuff online and webinars and connecting with people in the ways that I can. And I think it's kind of a beautiful reset of how I see the world as being so physical, because for me right at this moment it's not.
Wow. Thank you for that. And I love that awareness of how, although this feels like a newer situation, you already have all the tools and you're already so practiced in using them, just with a different focus, that you can bring all of that muscle memory even into how you're navigating this particular moment in time.
And it's funny, I wrote this book called Venture Everywhere, which is, this kind of global journey. So I was joking to a friend, my next book will be called Venture Nowhere, and
Right?
how you can go on these journeys, but maybe not leave your house. But yes, for anyone who's listening, I will be totally fine. I'm just having a little bit of a blip and a reset, but it is kind of, helping me reframe, what it means to, live the life that I've been living.
Right. And we know everything is happening for us, not to us. And it's a beautiful opportunity for you to take stock, but also to know, like, we're good. We're good. We're fine. And I love your reflection on where am I a bottleneck in this process? Because when you build something from scratch, when you create this beautiful thing and then it's growing and it requires teams of people, there's there are growing pains in that as well. And because you're experiencing that, of course, it makes you even a greater asset to the companies that you support and invest in because you know what's coming their way in their own, however that plays out for them in their business.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. There are a few entrepreneurs in my portfolio, and I'm just, very connected with them. And whenever they want to speak about something, I'm, happy to jump on a call. And one of them who I'm very close with messaged me, about a challenge that she's going through, and I said, this was kind of last week, and I was like, you know what, I can only, focus kind of on mission critical things, but my wonderful co-founder who she knows very well is happy to talk to you. And it was, this kind of moment of saying, like, we actually have built the foundation of a really good partnership and firm that, a relationship that's so intimate, I can pass off to my co-founder in this moment where I can't be there. So yeah, I've had some moments of light, I think, throughout this.
Hey, it's so good. And all of these things I feel like shine a light on our relationship with support as well, because being strong and full of good ideas and driven in a really passionate way, it can be hard to share the responsibilities.
For sure. For sure. And the connections and the relationships, and, like, I'm always here for this founder, and I'm like, you know what? I have to prioritize some other things right now, but you know what? We've got, like, a really great foundation for other people to support you. And she was obviously, totally supportive of that as well, but it's just hard for me to say no to, to people that I care about.
Of course, of course. And when we can, and I know you do this, of course, but when we can pull back and see how that benefits even your relationship with your co-founder, that you would hand off this important person into her care, which of course she's going to be taken care of, all of these things, but the gesture on their own might not seem as impactful as how the other parties receive it, and it strengthens the entire organization because of that. Sometimes we can convince ourselves that that weakens it, but it actually strengthens it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So tell me about the book. I'm very excited. I've got mine on order. I can't
Um,
wait. But why did you write it? What do you want people to know? All the good things.
Well, the book starts with me as a 8 or 9 year old convincing my grandmother, who is a very big influence on me growing up, to take me on an adventure with her. And she wasn't expecting to have a companion, but she ends up, with a 9 year old on a train adventure through Europe. She basically treats me like an adult, and we, go on these, like, fantastic adventures and have all these experiences. And I think from that moment, I really had not just, like, the travel spark, but I really had this kind of hunger to see the world and experience things outside of my own upbringing. Now, I grew up in New York City, so it's not that I was necessarily, like, sheltered to a lot of things, but in some ways I was. And that experience of being able to wake up in the morning and have no plans and figure out what the day was going to bring and experience new, cultures and food and people, was very impactful for me. And yet, I, when I got back to New York after this adventure, I continued. I mean, as a 9 year old, I didn't have much choice, but I continued in a very, let's call it, traditional, world. So I ended up going to, university, and then to law school. And then I worked at, a big bank. And so I was kind of on this path. And one day I woke up, and I actually loved all these things. I loved law school and actually loved working at JP Morgan. And, like, they were really great experiences. But one day I woke up and I thought, you know what? I'm not really sure why I'm here doing all these things. Like, this was a checklist and it was someone
Mm.
else's checklist, but I don't think that this life is really my calling. And it wasn't in a kind of meltdown way or anything like that. I just thought, the world has more in store for me. And I really thought back to those adventures that I'd had with my grandmother and the culture. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, and kind of the culture of how I was raised in some ways, and how that contrasted with the life that I was playing out, which was very much kind of check a box and kind of do all the things you're supposed to do. And so that was it. I changed it. And I ended up starting a company, in my living room, as many entrepreneurs do, and falling in love with tech and entrepreneurship. And that was really what got me kind of going on my journey. And the book is really a reflection of the last, call it 15 years of both building companies and investing in companies, and the just incredible entrepreneurs that I've interacted with over those years, and what I've learned from them and what we can all learn. So I'd say that's kind of a summary of the book. So it's kind of fun because it's part travel journal, part business principles, lots of adventures in many different countries, and hopefully some nuggets that people can take to inspire them on their own journeys.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait. So as you decided to start this company,
Yeah.
how do you start? I moved here from California. I lived in the Bay Area. I got off on Sand Hill Road all the time, but I was to walk at the Dish at Stanford. But I have an understanding of venture capitalists and what they're doing and all the things that they're up to in that particular area. But as a startup, how were you deciding who you want to work with? When does a entrepreneur know that it's time to visit a VC? How does this work?
Yeah. So I started that first company in my living room. I did not come from, a community of entrepreneurs. As I said, went to law school, and most of my friends were, kind of traditional New York professionals on Wall Street, et cetera. But I had like a burning need to solve a problem in the world. And I call that, the empath founder. It's not that I wanted to start a company, it's that I wanted to solve a pain point that I was experiencing. And so I think when you kind of lead from that, everything else falls away. Like who you get money from and how big your company grows and all these things, because like you are just so mission focused on solving this problem. So I bootstrapped that business, had some co-founders, and we ended up, raising a little bit of money and kind of going full force. But it was just something that was a non-negotiable for me. Like I was going to solve this problem, and I was just very directed to do it. It wasn't like, oh, how do you start a company? I'm going to start a company. It was like I just started working on something nights and weekends. And I think the message that I want people to hear is that I think there's a little bit of misperception, or it's, what you read about in TechCrunch and the Wall Street Journal of like people leaving it all and starting these companies. And, that does happen. But I think there's another path to entrepreneurship, and that is you just start with small things, right? You start with projects, you start with things that you want to change, and you spend small amounts of time. So like, again, I was working a intense job at JP Morgan, like, 60, 80 hours a week. But then on my, nights and weekends, I started, formulating this concept and thinking about what a prototype would look like and doing research on my market. And so I don't think everything has to be so binary where you just like throw it all in and do this crazy thing. I don't even know if that's viable for many people that have families or people that have other obligations or financial needs. And so I think there's small ways to get going, and that doesn't necessarily even involve venture capital or everything that you kind of read about in the industry that I'm in. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's
No, it
kind of
does.
how I got started. I'm both an accidental entrepreneur and then an accidental investor. So that was how I kind of fell into entrepreneurship. And I also fell into being an investor, which was after I'd gotten the entrepreneurial bug and I'd run two companies. I was kind of working on the idea for my third company, when I came across an opportunity that would kind of put me on the other side, more on the investing side. And I ended up pursuing that more out of kind of intellectual curiosity. I always thought I would go back to being a founder, but I was kind of interested in how the other side thought about things. And I thought it would make
Mhm.
me a more well rounded entrepreneur to kind of learn about the money behind the money or the people behind the money, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up kind of on that side learning. And as I was going through that journey of, learning how to be a venture capitalist, turns out I not only fell in love with it, but I realized that I was probably a better early stage investor than I was an entrepreneur in many ways. And now I feel like I found my kind of true calling, and I'll always iterate and kind of reinvent how that manifests. But supporting founders at the earliest stage of their journey is what I was put on this earth to do.
I love it. And I love that you had a short stint as a founder so that you understand what that's like. Because I heard some Gino Wickman, I think I heard him on a podcast say that there is an entrepreneurial gene and 10% of people have it, and it's another language to people who don't. And I understand that it's can be scary and feel very reckless and all of those things, but I have the gene, so I understand being introverted, but I don't really understand what it's like to be introverted. So I feel like the same way about not being an entrepreneur. So I love that you had that experience and you can speak to those pain points and also put them in perspective because you are no longer a founder, right? It progressed. So you made a comment early on about this empath founder. I'd love for you to define that, and then I'd love to hear how you are being matched with these early stage startups.
Yeah, so I think the empath founder again is like solving a personal pain point and making the world the place that they want to be, whatever that pursuit is. And that could be, a fun consumer product that they always wish was exist, or it could be like, a deep healthcare problem that they just feel like is totally broken. I mean, it kind of runs the spectrum, but it's really about solving something that's very personal to them. And I think that the entrepreneurial journey is long. Again, not what you necessarily read about where everyone is an overnight success.
It takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Exactly. So if you're going to be working on something for 10, 12 years, like we got to make sure that you are passionate about it. And people are often passionate about things that impact them, their families, their community
Mhm.
personally. So
Sure.
I think that's for me the empath founder. It is by all means not the only way to found a company. And there are many successful companies and examples of founders that are maybe more clinical, where they have, kind of a good skill set and a good team, and they set out to find a problem that they can work on. And that can work as well. I'd say that's just not me. And that's not necessarily the types of founders that I'm drawn to. I'm really drawn to ones that are kind of feel the mission very personally.
Hmm.
That's a little bit what I mean by, the empath founder. And, I built a fund over the last, or built my investing track record over the last 10 years of really sniffing out and finding these extraordinary entrepreneurs wherever they are globally who are solving problems that are very acute to them and their communities. And that's really my job. It's funny. I mean, most people think even at the early stage, like, and even I thought when I started investing, like, oh, my job was going to be like, analyzing founders' metrics and their financials and, their product. And then once you invest in them, you're going to help them with strategy and you're going to help them, iterate on their product. And like, none of that is actually true. At the earliest stage, I'm much more like a talent agent. Like, I'm out
Mm.
there scouring the world looking for unique individuals who have a vision of a future that maybe doesn't even exist yet, but they're going to will it into existence through perseverance, hard work, and maybe a little bit of code. And so the job is really understanding humans and human psychology, which is not what I thought it was.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills. I love that that's how you spend your days. And I would love to hear, was your first client an international situation that's what turned it global, or how did you move from domestic to global and now you're scouring the world, which sounds so fun.
So I think, again, going back to that story with my grandmother, I think I've always, seen the world larger than maybe some people do. And I've
Mhm.
always, been able to take interesting lessons and learnings from people that I've met around the world. And fundamentally, I believe, and, many of us at our firm believe that, innovation is everywhere. But historically, the capital has been constrained to places like Silicon Valley, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
Stanford and Sand Hill Road. And so capital has been highly concentrated there. If you look in the last few years, COVID, cryptocurrency, some of these other forces, globalization, all of a sudden, like, you know what? Innovation isn't just in the Bay Area. Innovation is everywhere. And so we want to be where the best entrepreneurs are, wherever they are. And oftentimes teams don't look very traditional. You'll have one founder who's living in Austin, Texas, and one who's
Mhm.
living in London, and one who's living in the Philippines. And so, like,
Right.
where's that company based? Like, I don't know. So we tried to kind of break the rubric of, everything has to be very concentrated in the Bay Area and say, how do we support, find, and, cultivate relationships globally? And my co-founder and I both have, traveled to more than 100 countries and have built communities in many places. We've lived in multiple, continents. And so how could we kind of wrap that up into a thesis of everywhere ventures? So I'd say it started, much more locally, and it's just grown as we've developed these kind of nodes of relationships and nodes of founder networks around the world. I don't think you can just, like, hang your shingle and say we're a global firm. There's just a lot of legwork you need to do. And for my co-founder and I, it's just, been relationship building for the last, 15 years, living
Right.
in these countries, working in these countries, starting companies, meeting entrepreneurs on the ground, trying to understand the cultures and the mentality, and then, slowly building trust and credibility that we could, get access to really interesting talent in all of these places.
I have like 1,000 questions. Are you finding that there is, I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I'm interested in your take. Are you finding that geographically there is an influx of innovation, besides the epicenter of the universe, the Bay Area? She says with an eye roll. Um, or are you finding that there's not necessarily a place that has some sort of concentration, but that there's like an energy that is just some you're finding it everywhere, but and you're just knowing you have your metal detector is more honed, that you can see in, oh, these people are doing this over here and it has the same ingredients of what these people are doing over here and what these people are doing over here and these people are doing over here, and we know that when those ingredients are at play, something magic is about to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thesis of the book. The thesis is there are some archetypes and personas that entrepreneurs share wherever they are in the world, and if you can sniff those out and find them and cultivate them, then you can invest in companies anywhere, because it's really like those driving forces. But to give you an example, in 2007, I started my first company, and I'm born and raised New Yorker, lived in New York. As I mentioned, I was working at JP Morgan. And everyone looked at me and they said, well, if you're going to start a software company, you need to move out to the Bay Area. And I mean, it's comical now because New York is the
Right.
second largest tech ecosystem in the world. But let me tell you, in 2007, it didn't look like this. There was no accelerators, co working spaces, venture capitalists. I mean, none of that was here. Angel groups, it just didn't exist. But I did look around and I said, okay, like, we don't have all those things that maybe the Bay Area has. but we do have a lot of good bones. And so what that looked like is, we've got incredible universities with great
Mhm.
tech talent coming out. And so that's like a key element. So, okay, check that box. We have every multinational based in New York. So, you need to sell into those people, like check that box. And you know what? We don't have venture capital, but we have a lot of rich people here. They might be
Yep.
coming from real estate or Wall Street. So I kind of looked around and I just like, shrugged my shoulders a little bit and said like, yeah, I get it, but I think this place could be as big and as significant as the West Coast. And so I dug my heels in, and it was kind of sad and lonely at the
Right.
early stages. Like there were so few of us, right? And people thought we were a little nutty, and we were working in my apartment, and there just wasn't much of a community. So I can't say it was delightful, but then we saw, over the last 15 years, it just starts building little by little by little. So my point is that I don't think that, even though we do believe innovation is everywhere, some communities just, they take a little bit longer to
Sure.
kind of catch up and cultivate, and for that, that institutional knowledge to be passed down to other, founders. And
Sure.
so I then experienced that living in London. So I lived in London in 2010, and that was a very exciting time, but very nascent. And, that ecosystem really, just went crazy, but we were at the beginning stages of it there. And so I've now experienced this firsthand in over a dozen places, and I've seen
Mm.
this kind of like crescendo of excitement that has to happen. We're all, you need government to pitch in, and you need entrepreneurs to, kind of give back, and you need capital to kind of be able to, take the risk. And so these elements start coming into play, and it can be very powerful. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is really exciting because now you're saying, okay, well, it's not just London. Let's look at, emerging markets, and let's look at what's happening in Brazil, and let's look what's happening in Nigeria. And all these places are just becoming such incredible hotbeds because, these elements that I just mentioned are starting to catalyze. So we do believe that, innovation is everywhere, and that, we're just all catching up to being able to capitalize on those opportunities.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I think even the word capitalize is it's much more, as you said, reciprocal than that, because they need the capital, and it feels really good as an empath founder. I am her. That sounds really that I love that new title of what I've been doing, but it feels really good when somebody who has your background, has your backing also, when you feel seen by somebody that has a resource that can help you and believes in what you're all of those things, it just that's fuel that holds space for more creativity and more innovation. And it's just this beautiful, the ripple effects of that impact. And then, of course, as they grow and flourish, it is helpful for your company from a bottom line, but also like it's filling your heart that this thing that you wanted to do is working, and that you
Yeah.
are able to, it's not like you said, it's not just plug and play, but it's repeatable.
What's so funny is this seems so obvious to me. Like, yes, like, there's incredible people everywhere, and we need to go and find them and support them. But oftentimes in these ecosystems, like I'm one of the only, right, who's
I
not
know.
there. So I had a funny, I was in Australia over in December, and the Australian tech ecosystem is actually quite mature, and they've had some amazing success stories that have happened over the last decade. Definitely had been behind what's happening maybe in New York or California, but like really catching up. But Australia is far for many people. So I spent about 3 weeks in Australia, and I was meeting with founders and VCs and ecosystem players and government, and everyone, the first question they would ask is, Jenny, why are you here? And it was so funny because they just don't get visitors like me. So like people from the US just like don't go to Australia, right? Or like maybe they've been once, to on some like, tourist trip, but like you just don't get investors who go over there and meet it. So everyone was just like so shocked that like I was there. Now the Australians, they come to the US multiple times a year, like it's nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
they get on planes and go wherever they need. Many of them, most of them, it seems, have lived around the globe and kind of from day one have this everywhere mindset that I talk about in the book. But it was just, they're all, even in this day and age, they were shocked to see me because nobody comes to visit them, right?
Wow.
And so I do find in many of these ecosystems, like there are just not that many of us there, right? And so we do kind of stick out. Now for us, we feel like it's an advantage, right? Because we can develop relationships and we can develop our brand. But it seems so obvious to me, and I just kind of always wondering like when the rest of the world's gonna catch on to this.
Oh, it's so good. And I just thought connection is my superpower. And I just thought of, I know a woman who is in the process of opening the first woman owned bank in Australia.
Oh,
So I
very
would
cool.
love to connect you.
Yeah,
That
amazing.
would be so fun. Okay, I just have to write a note. My listeners know I have two speeds. They are right now or not at all. So, okay, I will connect you. That's so fun. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this. I love that you are doing what you love and going all the places that you want to go. And I feel the same about all the fabulous things that I get to do. It's like we're at work right now. That is crazy. So for you to be having these other experiences that were 60 to 80-hour weeks, I'm sure in some of these instances, as you're going to new places and researching new markets and all those things, that there are some 60 and 80-hour weeks and they feel completely different than what you were doing before.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, the premise of my life in the book is really you got to live the life that you want to live. And so, can you take small steps? Like, this didn't happen to me from day one. I didn't graduate college and have this life, but like, what have I, put in place over the last 20 years to allow me to be in the place that I am now? And, the book kind of gives a few breadcrumbs of, different mindsets and mentalities that anyone can put into place. You don't need to get on a plane to Australia. It's really about the inner entrepreneur and what are the small things that you can do to affect change in your community, in your company, in your life. So I hope that that is the message and that people have fun just, experiencing all these global places, but I don't think it's necessary to kind of manifest the everywhere mindset.
I love that. So, can you speak to a few of those mindset, quote unquote, tricks? I mean, we know the power of intention, and here we talk a lot about the big dreams and that are in our heart, and if these dreams are in us, then these dreams are for us, and holding safe space to get some water and sunshine on those dreams so they grow and all of those good things. What mindset things or practices have you implemented that really helped you in this journey?
Yeah, so the book is, over the last decade, I've met with so many interesting entrepreneurs, and I've noticed some key, let's call them characteristics. Now, these things are sometimes innate and sometimes they're cultivated. So, maybe we can come back to your comments about the person that said, 10% of people are born entrepreneurial, but these are kind of attributes that I've seen in some of the most successful founders. And so in the book, I kind of break down, 6 of these attributes that I have experienced myself as an entrepreneur and as a venture capitalist. And, I've noticed across many other entrepreneurs. And so I'd say, one of the big ones, and maybe the one I'll start with, is just this idea around conviction.
Mm,
And this is having a mission that stems from some deep inner place. And sometimes it's faith, and sometimes it's just like a higher belief in where the world should go. Sometimes it's like,
mm,
traditional impact and service. But one of the characteristics that we see in many of the founders and in a few of the founders that I profile is just this deep inner conviction of what they're doing and what they're building. And so I think what helps them through this, or helps them endure some of the hardships of entrepreneurship, because again, that 10-year plus journey is not necessarily easy, is that they are just so focused. They have so much conviction in what they're doing that they kind of block out all the noise. There's one founder that I profile, an amazing woman named Hilla, and she's in Israel. And she, was building this language learning company and had incredible conviction, even when everyone was like, who is this woman building this company? And she ended up coming to New York to take her company public 2 weeks after having her first child and bringing the baby with her. It was February, it was freezing cold. Everyone was like, this is insane. And she was just like, listen, I'm not going to be the person that you want me to be, like the mother who stays home, and like I'm going to take the baby with me and we are going to make this happen. And so that inner conviction just drove her. Ultimately, she was quite successful, and the company was one of the first. She was one of the first women to take a company public in Israel. So it was kind of a great story, but there was just a lot of adversity for her and a lot of voices telling her that this wasn't the way to go. So I'd say, I break down some of these archetypes and these personas and kind of dive into what their driving forces are.
I can't wait to read it.
Oh, good. Well, next week it comes out. So.
Oh my gosh, very fun. Well, please tell everybody where they can get their hands on their own copy, where they can find and follow you, all the beautiful things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, your bookseller of choice, venture everywhere. And I'm very prolific on short form content, actually. So the book was kind of my first book and was, a joy to write. But the truth is, I'm very active on LinkedIn and other social podcasts and Twitter and all of that. So easy to find.
Perfect. Well, we'll link everything down in the show notes.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time, Jenny. I have loved this conversation.
So fun to be here and join you.
Thank you. I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.